Alright, what is going on everyone? Welcome back to the channel, or welcome in if you're new. In this video, we're going to be covering PulseChain, your PLS cost basis during this sacrifice phase. Alright, so leave a thumbs up if you enjoy this kind of PulseChain content. Be subscribed by the end of the video if you aren't already. Our subs have been blowing up over the past few days, so thank you for that. Let's get to 4K subs. Let's talk a little bit about the bonding curves we're seeing in Pulse, both the time and the volume bonding curves, and how that affects your cost basis per hex if you're sacrificing whether they be stable coins or if you're sacrificing something speculative. We also have a chart for you for that. So let's start off with the basics, right? Here is your time bonding curve, which you're familiar with, which essentially says that, here, let's zoom in a little bit for you. And we'll touch on all these details. But this pulse time bonding curve essentially tells you how many US dollars it costs per 10,000 sacrifice points. Now, a sacrifice point is in theory just a PLS, right? You'll be able to mint your PLS 1-to-1, assuming based on how many sacrifice points you accumulate. So just some terminology there for you. But you have this flat part of the curve, which we're currently on day 3. And we're still in the flat part of the curve where every dollar will get you 10,000 sacrifice points. So effectively speaking, if everything works out, you'll probably get 10,000 PLS per US dollar, assuming everything works out. So what else do we want to say about this? Well, that's pretty much it. You see it flat until day 5, and then on day 5, you have a 5% increase for the next 2 weeks up until it hits about the $2 mark. So it pretty much doubles. Now, well, what can you do with this? Well, this is cool, but it doesn't take into account the volume curve. The volume curve essentially says at the end of the sacrifice phase, based on the size of your position relative to everyone else, you'll get a number, you'll be assigned a number between 1 and 2.5. If you're the biggest guy, you'll get 2.5x on your points. If you're the smallest guy, you'll get just barely over a 1x. And so effectively what this does is it changes this curve, or not this curve specifically, but it changes your cost basis, because time is one curve that you need to take into account for your cost basis, and then volume. And if you take both of them into account, you get a chart that looks like this. It looks pretty cool. And what I went ahead and did here is I essentially plotted this time bonding curve, yet also applied different volume curves. So if you're a little guy, then we're looking at the red curve for you. If you're a whale and you're sacrificing, hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of dollars, then the pink curve is your curve. So the way the volume curve works is pretty interesting. Again, you get a number assigned between 1 and 2.5 for you based on the size of your sacrifice position. However, on the last 3 days, everyone gets a flat rate. So on the last 3 days, no one is a whale, no one is a little guy. Everyone is treated the same along the volume curve, and they're treated as an average guy. They're treated as this green curve, because you get a 1.75x volume regardless of who you are. So this gives you some interesting game theory, but it reflects it here in the charts. It reflects here in the charts that everyone is treated as the average person. And you see the continuity between the green curve and where this ends up, right? So that's your chart. And what does this say, right? If this is your cost basis over time, you obviously want to get in at the lowest cost basis. So if you're a little guy and you're sacrificing, say, a stable coin, then you pretty much want to get in on days 1 through 5, clearly, where it costs you $1 per 10,000 points, because it only increases from there, right? If you're a little guy. The interesting part is, sure, it dips and you're treated as an average guy, but the time curve caught up so that it's actually still cheaper on the first 5 days, right? Because even though you become treated as a average sized stack, you only go back to $1.03, and then $1.08 and $1.13, where clearly $1 is the cheapest. So if you're a little guy sacrificing stables, days 1 through 5, 100%. If you start getting into bigger stacks, so you're more of a whale, then it's actually the pink curve that applies to you. And again, the same idea. You want to come in at the lowest point possible, assuming you're sacrificing stables. So this chart pretty much tells you that anyone who's sacrificing stablecoins days 1 through 5, that was already obvious. But then you ask yourself, well, what if I'm sacrificing something that's moving? In this example, we'll do it with HEX, right? And I just plotted here the August 2nd, the day the sacrifice phase ends. And so what do you get in terms of your cost basis if you're gonna sacrifice something that's moving in price, not stables, right? Then you have to plot your ROI in HEX terms, starting from day 1 of the sacrifice phase. So on day 1, we just have an ROI of 1, right? Assuming you bought HEX the day of the sacrifice phase, then this is what your ROI looks like. And so when the phase started, it was around 12 cents or so, I believe, like 12, 13 cents. And we actually grabbed our daily data up here. Yeah, about 12 cents. And then this is the average price per day, by the way. Then it went to 17.8 cents the next day, and then 15.8 cents the next day. So given that, 12, 18, and then about 16 cents, you see that, well, we pumped 47%, and now we're up 31% from day 1 of sacrifice phase on your HEX. And so when do you want to sacrifice? If you're going to sacrifice HEX and you're looking at this chart, I hinted it in the previous video, not hinted, but I explained how you want a peak ratio between this ROI and your specific bonding curve, or your specific cost basis. Let me repeat that. You want the peak ratio between your HEX ROI and your cost basis to find the optimal play for sacrificing. So what happens when you divide a curve by a flat line at 1, you're just going to get the curve. If you divide it by a flat line beneath 1, you're going to get basically the same curve, but shifted up a little bit. And it looks something like this, right? This one here, real quick, is just the inverse of this one, right? Your purchase power is peak when your cost basis is lowest. So it's just this chart up here, but inverse, right? So this is not as interesting. What's really interesting is this, because this finds, again, peak ratio between HEX ROI and your specific cost basis. So if you're a little guy, then day 2 would have been the best for everyone so far, because we're in the flat part of the curve. Things will start getting interesting once we get past day 5. I think that'll be interesting. So, assuming the price of HEX keeps going up and goes beyond that 17, 18, 19 cent level, then you'll be better off having waited. So far, it's looking like day 2 was the best. It's looking like day 1 guys are left behind by both day 2 guys and day 3 guys. So a lot of guys are expecting day 5 to be significant, right? A lot of guys are expecting day 5 to be significant. And so it really depends on what the price of HEX does, right? So let's take a look at just an example real quick. Like, let's say the price of HEX just is something like this, right? Let's say it goes 17 and then goes to 19. Let's just say it goes up by 2 cents a day. Just a thought experiment, okay? Then what you'd get is something that looks like this. And we probably have to update these. Yeah, we have to update these. So I'll keep you guys updated on that, just so I don't bore you guys. It'll take a while here. But it essentially means keep an eye on this chart, right? So something else I wanted to bring up was we actually have a timer. I started this public countdown, not a timer, excuse me. I started this public countdown so that it's easier to see when we're in what part of what day of the phase. I based this off of the PulseChain official Twitter announcement when sacrifice phase was live. I believe it was about 4:48 UTC on July 14th. No, July 15th, 4:48 UTC. That's when it was. And so it's been a little over 2 days. So we're on day 3 currently, I believe. And we're about to tick over in about 7 hours and 16 minutes. So I'll probably leave a link to that in the description below as well. And some of you guys might have been like, well, how am I going to keep track of this if if I don't have it? I have a surprise for you at the end. So let's just kind of finish off. Take a look at how much capital has actually entered the sacrifice phase, right? And this is only on the Ethereum chain. Remember that there are sacrifices being made on the Ethereum chain, on the Binance Smart Chain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, and more. So currently we have about $212 million sitting in this Ethereum wallet. $212 million. It's almost $250 million raised in just like less than 3 days, which is nothing short of absolutely incredible. And this isn't even taking into account, again, the other chains that have received donations, or Sens, right? Sens Foundation, which has received like $22 million plus in donations for longevity research. You see Aubrey on YouTube and Twitter like hyping up the project, and Richard, and just expressing his gratitude because this can change the world. So I wanted to point all this out. This is so far how much has been accumulated, $212.5 million or so. And remember, we had a whole video on how much sacrifice capital we thought was going to enter, and this hasn't changed at all. I haven't changed this at all. Let's actually make these dollars to show you that we expected, based on the Telegram poll, we expected a minimum here, a bearish target of $181 million. How much is entered? $221 million. And it's simply day 3. So now you start seeing that could we reach these levels of $900 million, $1.6 billion? These are more bullish predictions. Then yeah, you can. And it's even interesting to think that our kind of soft limit of 10 million when we did these calculations for like just mega whale was actually so far, I think the biggest donation we've seen is about 11 million, or the biggest sacrifice we've seen around 10, 11 million. So pretty good estimates. I mean, we kind of called it, didn't we? Between 180 million and $1.6 billion, we're already in the range. Unless you think we're going to go above this, I don't know if we can make it above 1.6 billion, but we'll see on day 5 specifically. I know a lot of people are thinking that there's going to be a lot of money entering, specifically because of what I showed you here on this, right? A lot of people think that the price of HEX is going to keep moving up. And so what that would cause is essentially your sacrifice power, your sacrifice purchasing power, HEX dollar value power, would be increasing and find some sort of peak where it'd be the ideal place, so to speak. But it's all speculation, so be very careful. Again, sacrificing stables, it's obvious, day 1 through 5. Sacrificing something speculative, a little less obvious. You're going to have to keep track of this, which I'll actually include for you guys over the next 19 days on LookIntoHex.com. All right. I made a whole new section for the PulseChain sacrifice, so you can track your own cost basis with these charts. So I'm including just the time bonding curve. I'm including cost basis. That includes both time and volume bonding curves for, let's say, like stable coins. Then you can use this chart. However, if you're specifically sacrificing HEX, then you want to use this chart. I shouldn't say if you're sacrificing stables, use this chart, because if you're sacrificing stables, I already told you, days 1 through 5, okay? So this is just more so to measure the HEX ROI relative to the cost basis, and this is more so to measure the actual cost basis, your actual sacrifice power, which is like an inverse of your cost basis if you're sacrificing HEX. I hope that makes sense. I mean, leave your comments down below, because a lot of this stuff makes sense to me. And I know very technical terminology, but all you really have to understand on this is that this bottom chart is going to be the most important chart for you. If you're sacrificing HEX, that's pretty much it, right? You want to find a peak on this chart. A peak on this chart will be an ideal spot to sacrifice. Like so far, it's been day 2, for example, when the price HEX was a little higher than now, like 10, 20% or something. So that's that. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up if you like this kind of analysis on PulseChain. Whip this up so you guys can keep track of this over the next 19 days. We'll see what we do with it after that. But yeah, I might include the timer actually somewhere up here. So by the time this video is live, go to lookintohex.com/PLS, and it should should be there. It should be there. So again, appreciate you watching. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.